everyone, welcome back to Big Markets Think Simple. Have you ever imagined this? A massive pharmaceutical company that saved tens of millions of lives around the world started in a cheap, rundown motel room next to a railroad track in San Francisco. Today's story is about someone who knew nothing about biotech, moved to the US, and spent 2 years teaching himself everything from scratch. That's how Korea's leading biotech company, Celltrion, was born. In the early days, the company came so close to bankruptcy there was almost no money left. Now, they're aiming to cross $3.7 billion in revenue by 2026, going head-to-head with the biggest pharma giants in the world. So how did this company come to be, and where is it headed next? Today, we'll walk through Celltrion's founding story, how they make money off biosimilars, the challenges ahead, and how the market views the company. Let's get into it. This video is not investment advice. It's for educational, entertainment, informational purposes only. I'm not a financial advisor. Please do your own research before making any investment decisions. Any investment decisions are your own responsibility. This story starts in 1999, during the Asian financial crisis. When GM Daewoo collapsed overnight, Jung-Jin, an executive there at the time, lost his job. He'd tried several businesses to make ends meet, but they all failed. Backed into a corner, he boarded a flight to San Francisco with one last shot. With barely any money left, he checked into a cheap motel next to the train tracks. Through that window, he could see a massive factory in the distance. It belonged to Genentech, one of the top biotech companies in the world. What are they making in there that turned them into a company this huge? That one question changed everything. For 2 years, he filled his motel room with pharmaceutical reports and research papers and taught himself the industry. Eventually, through an introduction from a Stanford researcher, he connected with an American biotech company called VaxGen. In 2002, a joint venture aimed at producing an HIV vaccine was born. That company was Celltrion. But fate wasn't kind. Just months after breaking ground on a factory worth hundreds of millions of dollars on the tidal flats of Songdo, Incheon, VaxGen's HIV vaccine failed in clinical trials in March 2003. The massive factory built on borrowed money was suddenly at risk of becoming scrap metal. With bank loans drying up, they turned to private lenders just to survive. The company barely stayed afloat by landing a contract manufacturing deal with BMS, and through that process, Celltrion picked up world-class manufacturing expertise. Then, in 2009, Chairman Seo made a bold call that shocked the industry. He shut down the contract manufacturing business entirely, betting they'd never become a true global leader by just making drugs for others. Celltrion bet the company's future on developing Remsima, a biosimilar, winning approval in Korea in 2012, Europe in 2013, and the US in 2016. That was the moment the world's first antibody biosimilar was born on a tidal flat in Korea. Instead of just making other companies' drugs, they decided to develop and sell their own. So what exactly is this biosimilar that Chairman Seo staked everything on? Here's today's key term, biosimilar. It sounds unfamiliar, but the concept is simple. Generic drugs are made by other companies once the original patent expires, using the same chemical formula, like pouring the same batter into a waffle iron every time. Biologic drugs are different. They're not made from a chemical formula. They're grown using living cells. It's less like a waffle and more like growing a tree from a seed. Even with the same seed, the tree that grows depends on its environment, so you can never get a 100% identical copy. Instead, companies have to prove there's no meaningful difference in effectiveness or safety. A follow-on biologic approved this way is called a biosimilar. Take Celltrion's Remsima. The original Remicade is an expensive biologic used for autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis and Crohn's disease. Through extensive trials, Celltrion proved Remsima had no meaningful difference from Remicade in effectiveness or safety. It's a higher odds bet than a brand new drug, but far from as simple as a generic. Development can take years, and factories and trials can cost hundreds of millions of dollars. So why bother? Original biologics can cost tens of thousands of dollars a year per patient. Biosimilars create competition that brings prices down, letting more patients get treated. Couldn't the original drug maker just slash prices and squeeze them out? Easier said than done. Cutting the price hurts their own existing revenue too. So instead, they tend to offer private rebates to insurers and hospitals or roll out a new drug entirely and shift patients over. What about competition between biosimilar companies themselves? That's the real battlefield. Since a biosimilar can't claim to work dramatically better than the original, it's hard to outperform a competing biosimilar either. The winner comes down to speed, price, production cost, and distribution. And you have to keep launching the next product before someone undercuts you. So how did Celltrion actually survive this battlefield? As of 2026, Celltrion sells 11 biosimilars, including Remsima for rheumatoid arthritis and IBD, Hertsuma for breast and stomach cancer, Truxima for blood cancer, Omliclo for asthma, and Stobaclo and Alcinvelt for osteoporosis, spanning autoimmune disease, cancer, and eye conditions. Here's where it gets interesting. Remsima holds about 59% of the European Infliximab market. Add the subcutaneous version, Remsima SC, that climbs to 70%. Why so dominant? They got there first, building prescription track record and winning early bids. Hospitals don't easily switch away from a drug they know. In the US, though, their share sits around 30%, since the original drug maker defended pricing hard, and Celltrion sells through Pfizer there, limiting their direct control over pricing and strategy. But Celltrion has a weapon that offsets that: formulation. Traditional infliximab required a 1 to 1.5 hour IV infusion every 6 to 8 weeks. Celltrion became the first in the world to convert that into a self-administered subcutaneous injection, even winning US approval as a separate new drug brand, Zymfentra. That formulation alone turned Remsima SC into a blockbuster, pulling in roughly $620 million last year. Celltrion is now expanding this self-injection strategy to products like Omliclo, too. Bottom line, Celltrion's edge isn't one good biosimilar. It's the whole system, launching product after product, running their own sales network in Europe, and differentiating through formulation, so they're not just competing for price. Now let's see how that's translated into real money. In December 2023, Celltrion merged its manufacturing arm with Celltrion Healthcare, which sold products overseas. Merging isn't free, though. Operating margin dropped to 13.8% in 2024. In 2025, the picture flipped. Revenue hit roughly $3.08 billion, operating profit jumped to about $870 million, and margin recovered to 28.1%, up 137.5% year over year, as leftover merger costs finally cleared. That momentum has only strengthened in 2026. Preliminary Q2 results show about $960 million in revenue and $320 million in operating profit, up 35.2% and 77.3% year over year, with margin climbing from around 25% to about 33%. That's 2 straight quarters beating market expectations. The secret is the new products mentioned earlier. Remsima SC, Yuflyma, and Stecama now make up over 60% of revenue, meaning what's actually driving the top line has completely changed, from low-margin legacy products to high-margin new ones. Celltrion's next chapter breaks down into 3 directions: more products, more factories, and new business lines. First, products, from 11 biosimilars today to 18 by 2030 and 41 by 2038. This is still just the beginning. Second, factories. Alongside plants 1 through 3 in Songdo, they'll break ground on plants 4 and 5 starting in 2026 and are more than doubling their New Jersey plant to hedge against tariffs and build out contract manufacturing. They've already signed a roughly $500 million 3-year manufacturing deal with Eli Lilly. Third, an entirely new frontier: new drugs, antibody-drug conjugates, multi-target antibodies, and an obesity drug that works differently from GLP-1s. 16 candidates in total. Leadership has stated an ambition for new drugs to make up 40% of revenue by 2030. Most of this pipeline is still early stage, though, so it's a future option, not a current revenue source. The strategy isn't to become a new drug company overnight. It's to use steady biosimilar cash flow as a foundation, building manufacturing and new drugs on top over time. The market seems fairly confident about one thing. After beating expectations 2 quarters running, 2026 earnings growth looks solid. The real question is whether that continues into 2027, which depends on rising 2027 forecasts, Omliclo and Zymfentra succeeding in the US, and meaningful trial progress on the ADC and multi-target pipeline. There are real concerns too. First, pricing pressure. As more competitors enter, insurers push harder for discounts, and profit growth may lag sales growth. Second, Zymfentra's early U.S. performance fell short of expectations, and it's unclear whether coverage will translate into real prescriptions and profit. Third, overexpansion risk. Factories, CDMO business, and 16 drug candidates running simultaneously could become a massive cost if orders and trials don't pan out. What the market wants isn't a new story, it's proof. Selling what's already launched, filling new factories with real orders and turning paper profits into cash. Celltrion's next chapter comes down to execution. A former auto executive, drawn in by a building he spotted through a rundown motel window, jumped into an industry he knew nothing about. The company came close to bankruptcy, survived, and created the world's first antibody biosimilar. Whether Celltrion's next chapter, expanding into contract manufacturing and new drugs, comes together will depend on results and clinical outcomes over the next few years. What do you think about Celltrion's next move? If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe.